Hello, we're here today for another guest interview, and we're excited to talk to our guest. He's coming to us from Las Vegas, fabulous Las Vegas. He says not so fabulous anymore, but maybe. And so we're joined by Jack Fronczak. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Your show is amazing. Glad to be part of it.
You just busted him for trash talking his city.
I know.
Yeah, I want to hear how that
edit
is.
that. Edit that out.
I thought it was supposed to be getting better and better, Vegas. Too much?
No. Yeah. Overpopulated, crimes going through the roof right now.
Yeah.
Sounds like many American cities.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Well, so tell us tell us your story.
So on a brighter note, let's talk about my story.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. All right. So what do you want to know?
Well, start with the origin, like you're adopted. How did you come in to know?
Did you find out you were, how long have you known? Like, just like beginning.
Okay. So I'm actually recently thought about being adopted because I started this journey in 2012, but it started a long time ago when I was 10 years old. I was snooping for Christmas presents in the crawl space. And I thought, I found the big score in the back of the crawl space. So I crawled back there and I found all these boxes. And I thought, this is it, right? I found everything. Started opening the boxes, and there were newspaper headlines talking about a kidnapping, the worst kidnapping in Chicago. Baby Fronczak still missing. Sets off the largest manhunt in Chicago. And I'm looking at started reading through it, and I see the picture, and I see a picture of me. So I got all excited, and I ran upstairs, and I talked to my mom. She was doing something. And I said, hey, what's this? This is about me, right? She looked at me, she got real mad, and she said, how dare you snoop around the house? And I was like, but this is me. And I think she realized that I wasn't going to just let it go immediately because I was 10. So she said, you were kidnapped. We found you. We love you. We won't talk about it again. And that was it. I went back downstairs and we never talked about it again, but I never, ever forgot. I kept that with me my whole life. Yeah.
Were you in Chicago at this point?
Yeah, I was in Chicago. Yeah. So I was raised as Paul Fronczak, but I never really felt like Paul. Even being called Paul never really felt right to me. I didn't know why. But so my whole life, I kept this with me. So basically, the story is my mom had a baby in Michael Reese Hospital in Chicago. Someone just like a nurse came in and said the doctor had to see the baby, took the baby and vanished without a trace. I was found 2 years later abandoned in Newark, New Jersey, outside of a variety store called McCrory's. I was in a stroller outside the store. So they put me in the system. I was put in with a foster family, really nice family. They named me Scott McKinley, and I was with them for over a year. The family wanted to adopt me. And all of a sudden, the FBI shows up and says, I'm the Fronczak baby that was kidnapped from Chicago a few years before. So
they had no idea. The McKinleys were just raising you. No one knew who you were at this point.
Right. I was just a regular kid. So that was just your average place in the foster system, plucked out by the FBI, put in with another family story. Happens all the time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So my whole life, I never really, like I said, never felt like I love my family. They're an amazing family, just really nice people. But if you don't feel like you belong, you don't feel like you belong. So I kept that with me my whole life. And finally, in 2012, my daughter was turning 3. And the doctor asked me the usual questions. What's your medical history? So I spotted off what I always did. And then I stopped and I looked at my wife then and I said, what if I'm really not Paul? What am I doing to my daughter? Am I being authentic? Am I being the best dad I can be? So I decided.
Was just an instinct. Your mom, when you found the box, when you were 10 years old, like yes, you are our baby. End of story. Get on with your life. And so.
Right.
Okay.
But growing up, I didn't look like them. I was drawn to things that I was never exposed to. I started playing instruments. I started playing clarinet and guitar, then bass. I settled on bass. As you can see behind me, I'm still playing bass. And I just all these things that they never did. They never really listened to music, things like that. And then I had Rush albums going all the time. So I realized that it just didn't seem right, because how can you have these things that you're never exposed to, but you're drawn to them?
Yeah.
And I always thought about trying to get them to do a DNA test with me, but I never knew how. And growing up, those things weren't readily available. No one was doing DNA tests. So finally in 2012, I was at a CVS and I found an identigene kit and I could actually afford it. It was like $26 or something. So I bought it and I put it in the bathroom cabinet just in case, right? I get that moment. My parents came out to visit, see Emma and stuff like that. And about an hour before I was to take them to the airport, they were here a whole week. I didn't do anything. That last hour, I said, "Hey, did you ever really wonder if I was really your son?" And they looked at me. My mom said, I guess we thought about it now and then.
Oh, she said that.
She said, yeah. And I said, "So what if we had a way to find out? Would you want to do it?" She said, "Maybe." I said, "Hold on." I ran to the back. I got the DNA kit and I pulled it out. And within 5 minutes, we're all swabbing away at the kitchen table. And I think I caught them off guard because they really didn't realize what was happening.
And they were open to this, sort of.
They were open to it, right? So we did that. I sealed it up and I was inside. I was just so excited because I wanted to do this for such a long time to really find out.
Yeah.
And I took them to the airport. It's only a 10-minute drive, but it felt like it took 4 hours. Took them to the airport. We didn't say a word. Dropped them off. We said goodbye. When they got home from Chicago, they called me and my mom got on the phone and she said, "Don't send it in. We don't want to know." And I was like, I'm inside. I'm going, oh, I'm sending it in. I'm this close to the truth. How can you not want to know? Right. So we hung up and I wrestled with it. I had it on my desk in my house for about a week. And every day I'm passing it 50 times a day. And I finally grabbed it and I went across the street and popped it in the mailbox. And sure as anything, it got stuck in the mailbox, half in, half out. And I thought, I'm being tested right now. Right.
Yeah.
I looked at it and I just banged it in and I heard it drop and that was it. There was no turning back.
Okay. So from this, you're going to expand on this story, obviously. There's so much in my head. Your parents raise you. They're giving you, like when they got their baby back, they're told, "This is your baby." And everybody
But they
just
didn't
took
ever
that.
tell you anything about like, okay, I had you and you were taken. She didn't ever expound on that story at any point after you were 10 years old.
After I found the clippings, we never talked about it again.
That is just
never.
Did you have any siblings?
I had a younger brother.
Was he
their
their
biological
natural
son.
child? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
But as you were raised, you were their biological son and he was your brother.
Yeah, in a way. Dave was my younger brother, their biological son. He always had this certain easiness with them, like this familiarity. And he seemed to get anything he wanted. Like he had the bigger bedroom, even though he was younger. And I had the tiny little twin bedroom. So there was these little inconsistencies. I mean, usually the older brother would get the things first, right? And then they were passed down to the younger siblings. It didn't happen.
I have a question.
Was
Dave on the scene when you came back into their lives?
No, I came in and then my mom had Dave like shortly, right then. Everything happened at once. They had just bought a new house. They get me and then they have Dave. So my mom was just overwhelmed, trauma, everything. It was just way too much.
Trauma because she had a baby stolen, by the way.
Well, a kidnap, that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Huge. I mean, I can't even imagine.
Hospital.
That's that was my fear when I had my son.
And then the icing on the cake was before they had Paul, she had a stillborn in the hospital, that same hospital.
God. Your poor mom.
Yeah.
All right. Well, tell us. I want to hear.
So now you shoved the DNA kit into the mailbox and now you wait.
So I just go on with my life. I'm at work. A couple of weeks later, I get a phone call from Identigene. They asked me my passwords and things like that. And then the guy said, "There is no remote possibility that Dora and Chester are your parents. You're not Paul Fronczak." And I knew it. It's like I knew it up to that point. But once you hear those words, I'm at work. And I felt the color drain from my face. And everything I thought was my life just vanished in an instant. Just gone. And it's weird. It's, you see it in movies and stuff like that. But unless it really happens to you, you really can't describe the feeling. But it's something that you will never, ever forget.
What? Okay.
How old were you at this point?
This was back in 2012. So I was a little bit younger.
11 years ago.
Yeah.
So you had this whole life of
Paul
knowing, but didn't really get it confirmed until 11 years ago.
Right. And, I always say that, if you live a lie, you're not living at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, even though I knew I wasn't Paul, just hearing those words from a stranger just really drove it home.
I'm sure.
And the only thing I thought about was, I've got to find their real son.
That's what I was thinking. Where the heck's the kid that was stolen? And how did you come up to be left at a convenience store?
Yeah. Well,
oh my God.
Let's let him tell us.
Yeah.
And so first of all, it wasn't a convenience store. It was McCrory's variety store. It was the hottest store in New Jersey at that time. The store was so popular that they had a subway platform going right into the store. So in the 60s, people from all over, all the different boroughs, Manhattan, would come to this store. It was the place to go. So they had me in a brand new suit and a new stroller and just left me outside the store.
Knowing that somebody's going to take you in.
Yeah. That's what I'd like to think so. Because after I learned more about my family, it's a little tougher to believe.
So you don't have any idea who had you for the first part of your life?
I found my real family.
But your real family were the ones that had you when you were a baby and then dropped you off?
Oh yeah. It gets a lot darker than that.
Okay, go.
Yeah.
Tell us. I'm dying to know.
All right. So after we got the results back, I went on this mission to find out what happened to the real Paul. And this kidnapping happened, almost 50 years ago. So everyone said, don't waste your time. You're not going to find this guy. This is so long ago, right? So I turned to the only guy I could think about here. That was George Knapp. I'm into the X-Files, paranormal, conspiracies, all that stuff, right? And George Knapp is the guy who cracked Area 51. He's won all kinds of Peabody Awards for his reporting out here. He's like a hard-nosed reporter. Mm-hmm. So it was a Saturday afternoon. I sent him like 3 sentences. This is my story. What do you think? He got back to me in 10 minutes. I want to meet you. So we ended up meeting that following Monday. And he said, we've got to get the story out. We've got to find this guy. And he goes, how about you? Do you want to find out who you are? And I said, I haven't even really thought about it yet, but I guess it'd be nice to find out who I am too. But my main mission was my mom and dad, the Fronczaks, they raised me. They gave me the best life, and they're amazing people. And they had this horrible tragedy happen to them. So I thought the best way to pay them back is to find out what happened to their real son. Because this tragedy happened, the FBI just never solved it. They thought they solved it with me, and they just closed the case, and it wasn't closed at all.
It sounds like your mom knew. I would think
instinctually
that, it wasn't, they were not out seeking an adopted baby, right? So I think if you give birth, who that child is, I'm sure there was some on her cellular level. She knew her son.
So we never talked about it until the last couple of years. My mom and I are so close now, and we talk about things, how she actually felt. So she had the FBI. So they had to drive from Chicago to New Jersey. They were placed in this little room with the media and the FBI right outside. They were given like 15 minutes to spend with this baby who my mom only spent maybe an hour with prior, 3-4 years ago. And they had the FBI looking at them saying, is this your son? So my mom said that she was faced with, yes, this could be my child, or no, it's not my child. Send him back into the system and worry about what happened to him all this for the rest of his life. So she said, yeah, that's my son, because I very well could have been.
Yeah.
Did she feel like you were, or did she not tell you?
I believe at the time that she really felt that I was her son. She wanted me to be her son.
Oh yeah. I was going to say the want there would be,
that would be
massive. I'm sure over the years though, as you grew up, she's like,
We had some knockdown drag out fights, yeah. Because I wasn't like Dave at all, their other son. I was into rock bands and having keg parties in the backyard and sneaking girls in all the time. And Dave wasn't doing any of that stuff. So my mom started thinking, I don't know, is this really your son?
Yeah.
How did the FBI come to think that you were their son? Was it just the age, or
you're gonna love this? So I'm sure you've all seen CSI, how intricate it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Back then, it was the shape of my ear. That's all they had. Paul, when he was born, the hospital took a picture of him, but they never did blood tests or footprints.
Oh.
So they had one little picture of him. It's a picture you see in the papers and, you know, all the articles and everything. And just the side shot of his head. And so out of 10,000 boys, I was the only one that they couldn't rule out 100% because of my ears. So because of that, that's how I became adopted. So I was actually adopted under false pretenses, pretty much, because my parents thought that I was their son. They were just doing the paperwork that was required of them to take me home.
Yeah.
So they called it an adoption, even though the FBI, that even though they were claiming that this baby was born in the hospital by your mother. They still had them go through adoption process.
Yeah. I had the adoption papers and all that. They had to actually sign it off because they couldn't prove it without a doubt.
And you really are an adoptee because you really aren't their son. I mean, that's just, and the poor family that was raising you for a year that you must have bonded with. Have you ever met them?
Well, that sounds like
so the cool thing is, it was the Eckerts. They had like one of the top foster homes in Newark, New Jersey at the time. And I guess I was really bonding with the family and the father and stuff. And so they really wanted to adopt me. They were planning to adopt me. They named me Scott McKinley. I was baptized Scott McKinley. And I was going to live my life in New Jersey and be Scott McKinley until the FBI showed up and said, that's the Fronczak baby. So I got to meet Janet. Janet was like 17 or 18 when this happened. She was the daughter of the family that had the foster home. And she really bonded with me. And during this process, when I started writing the book, and then we shot the film, and I did the 2 2020s with Barbara Walters, Janet was actually part of those. They tracked her down. And during the whole time that we were together, she still calls me Scott.
Well, I mean, for that family, there's so much trauma going on here. It's like trauma for your mom that you're close to now, who's your adopted mom for better, and then trauma to this family. And then where were you? Like, tell us what you know.
What do I know? I know that I wasn't Paul.
Yeah.
So after I learned that in 2012.
Together with the Area 51 guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So George and I did one story on KLAS TV out here in Las Vegas. This story went like international overnight. All of a sudden I had all these networks calling me.
Where was I? Gosh.
I know.
It was huge. Yeah.
I'm sure.
So I ended up going with Barbara Walters in 2020 because when I went to New York, she was really nice to my daughter. And we spent a lot of time with her, got to know her, and her daughter was adopted. So this story was really personal to her. So that's what we did. We did the 2020s. And then people started writing me saying, your story's inspiring me. You should write a book. I had never thought about doing a book on this or doing anything. I just wanted to find the real Paul. So I started writing a book, and I wrote it with my pal, Alex Tresnowski. He and I were on the road. We're knocking on doors. Like, this journey is unfolding in real time while we're writing the book.
What's the name of your book?
The book's called The Foundling. Mm-hmm. It's available everywhere.
We'll put a link, by the way.
So we wrote it like you're actually with me on the journey, because I was actually on a journey.
It's a kind of a cinema verite book in a way, like it's unfolding as you go.
Right. Yeah. Every day brought a new chapter, something new happening.
And but who are these people that you're knocking on the doors? These are people that he had kind of found and said, this could be.
Okay. So I ended up doing a radio show called Coast to Coast AM, which is an amazing show. And George Knapp hosts it once in a while. So I did a couple episodes, and Cece Moore, who is the top genealogist in our country, she does Finding Your Roots. She works at Parabon, and it's like every week they're finding criminals that, over DNA, which is just amazing. She reached out to me and said, I want to help you find your identity and maybe find Paul. So I started working with her and her whole DNA search angel group, all these soccer moms pretty much. And it was tireless. We did all these things. The first thing I did was put my DNA on all the sites, Ancestry, 23andMe, GEDmatch, Family Tree, all these things. Didn't have any matches. months would go by, nothing. And I
Not
thought,
one.
this is
nothing on there.
crazy.
Huh.
Now, this is back in 2012, 2013, before it really got popular. Because now it seems like everyone's on DNA sites.
Yeah.
But back then it was just starting to be something. So one day this name pops up, Alan Fish, second cousin. I thought, holy cow, I found somebody part of my family, right? I was so naive. I thought that we would just do the DNA and we'd solve this in a couple of weeks. And then I would find my parents' child and it would be just wrapped up in a bow in like, maybe a month, right? No, it took years. But once we found this guy, Alan, started talking to him, of course, this story has always been one step forward, two steps back, right? If something weird and bizarre would happen, it's going to happen in this journey. Turns out Alan was adopted.
Also.
Right? Yeah, of course.
And he's your second cousin.
He's my second cousin.
Mm-hmm.
But his adoption, 2020, was able to get the papers opened and we were able to find who his mom was. His mom wanted nothing to do with it. And there was no father on the birth certificate. But during this, all of a sudden, like third cousins, fourth cousins started popping up. And this one third cousin, Amy, popped up. And she remembered a verbal history of her family passed on by her grandfather. And she remembered this motorcycles doo-wop singer in New Jersey that lived right where Alan's mom lived. And sure turns out that this guy was Alan's dad. And it was my second cousin. And it was because of that little lead, we were able to keep going and find my real family.
Wow. What?
So who was your real family?
Yeah.
How did it come to be that you were not with them?
Okay. Well, I was abandoned right in front of that store. So it turns out that
not to
real
interrupt,
family,
how old were you when you were abandoned? I forget too.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like 2 months shy of being 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
God, so sad.
yeah.
I
So
can't.
sad.
I know. Just
God.
So it turns out that CeCe Moore, through all this research, going through microfiche and all these areas, Atlantic City, New Jersey, finding little articles and names, matching all that together, of course, with DNA and stories that my cousin passed on. It turns out that CeCe Moore called me at work and said, "Can you talk?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So I ran out to my car because whenever CeCe called, I couldn't talk at my desk. I knew it'd be something good. I go out to my car and she said, "What do you think of the name Jack?" I said, "That's a good name. It's a strong name." She said, "That's your name." And before I could even process that for a minute, she said, "But there's more. You had a twin sister, Jill, and she's missing."
Oh
So as soon as I found out who I was, all of a sudden I had this new journey. Now I have to find Jill.
so
I've got to find Paul
Jill's
and
missing.
Jill.
Jill's missing since she was young.
Yeah, I'm guessing before or right at the same time I was abandoned.
Jesus.
He said, "Oh, Jesus."
I'm like, and just the trauma for these little kids. I mean, you're just this little guy
Yeah.
left at a store.
Yeah. Oh, it gets better. It gets a lot better. Yeah.
Gosh.
So through all this painstaking work, knocking on doors, DNA, CeCe Moore and her team had to back engineer who I was into this family. And so you have Jack and Jill, and I was baptized as Scott McKinley. I was baptized as Paul Fronczak, Catholic families. I'm really Jewish. My real name is Jack Rosenthal. And so the first thing I thought of was that my parents either murdered or abandoned my twin sister, Jill, because why would they get rid of twins for no reason? I had 2 older sisters and a younger brother who were still with the family.
Okay. So they kept all the other kids.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
And my mom, my real mom, my biological mom, Marie, she had 4 kids in 3 years.
So what is the situation there? Like what happened there? What did you find out?
Well, I got to meet a babysitter who babysat us one night, and that one night changed her life.
Oh my God. How?
She was babysitting the neighbors, and my mom leaned over the fence one day and said, "Hey, can you watch my 2 daughters?" She said, "Yeah, sure." So she showed up. She was in high school. She showed up to babysit the two daughters who she had seen before in the backyard, always dressed nicely, playing outside. She goes to the house. I guess my mom and dad were going out for the night, probably to the city because they weren't coming back till the morning. So the girl, her name was Susan. She shows up to babysit, and she hears crying upstairs, and she sees the two daughters downstairs. So my mom said, "That's just the twins upstairs. Don't worry about them. Don't even go upstairs."
What?
So of course, the first thing that the babysitter did when the parents left was go upstairs, and she found Jack and Jill in this horrible room in the dark with no water, no food, dirty diapers. Just the whole room smelled of urine.
Oh my God.
What the heck's happening here?
I had a black eye, and we were in separate pens. Yeah. So she walked over
Don't go upstairs.
Yeah, don't even worry about the twins. They're fine. Just take care of my daughters downstairs.
Okay, wait. Go on.
Yeah. I need a drink of water.
Oh. Man.
Yeah. So of course, the babysitter called her sister. They lived right in the neighborhood. It was Pitney Village. It was kind of this, I would say almost like housing back then. Her sister came over, took care of the other two daughters, and Susan went upstairs and took care of me and Jill. She walked over to me. I was cowering in the corner. She said I had a black eye, and I was really, looked a little off, right?
How old were you? Was this right around 2? So this is, I'm guessing, right around.
So
okay.
So I think from the timeline that I'm working on, Jill and I went missing shortly after this. So she walked over to Jill, and Jill was just staring at her, didn't make a sound. So you have two little toddlers in a room not making any noise. And she's like, it was the weirdest thing. So she gave us water and food, changed our diapers, and she held us all night. My parents came home the next day, and they just yelled at her for going upstairs. Susan said she ran out of the house and never went back.
She didn't call the police or anything?
So she told her mom and dad, and they said, it's none of your business. Don't do anything. It's a different time back then.
Yeah.
And she was this little girl in high school.
Different time or not, I can't handle that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's, so anyway, when I met her a couple of years ago for the film, she was still crying about this. She held that with her whole life. That's how traumatic it was for her. It was amazing meeting her.
She witnessed major abuse.
Yeah.
As a young person, and was told to do nothing about it. So you're complicit. She has to live with that, horrible.
Right. Yeah. And she always wondered what happened to Jack and Jill, because it's just weird that you could be babysitting the neighbors and never even see Jack and Jill. All you see is the two other daughters.
God.
Yeah.
So then shortly after that, you're left in front of the store.
Right.
But no Jill. Jill is not left in front of the store.
No Jill.
And
so the way I thought, why would you abandon one twin unless something happened to the other twin? And I have a different accounts from different cousins that had come to visit my mom and dad to see the twins. And my mom was, drunk, and she would just throw us down the stairs and stuff like that.
Like you had cousins that witnessed that happening?
Yeah.
So why were they so good to the other kids?
It's a good question.
I've read a lot of abuse cases and stuff that happens, but it's bizarre to me.
Oh, it's bizarre to me too.
So now you're on your journey. How did you find them?
So between CC Moore and the work that Alex and I were doing, just going over researching papers, old neighborhood history, talking to people, we were able to find out who my real family was. And that's how we were able to piece everything together.
And what's happened to those parents, your biological parents?
They both passed away.
Before you found them?
Before I found them, yeah. Back in the 90s. They both died at the age 62.
Of
Isn't that weird?
hard living?
I guess hard living, a lot of guilt maybe,
And what about the two daughters?
So
and then they had another son after, right? You said?
Yeah, they had a younger son. So I spoke with my younger brother, and I actually met my older sister. She was the oldest sister. The middle sister passed away. Mhm.
from.
A heart attack, I guess, Yeah.
And did the older sister remember what happened? Like,
No.
was she honest
According
with
to,
you? Or?
no, no. According to her, no recollection of any twins. Right. And just, I can tell she had a really hard life. She was living out just on the outskirts of Atlantic City in a trailer. And she was really open and let me into her home. That first time I met her, we were supposed to meet for lunch the next day, wouldn't answer the door. And I haven't talked to her since, just vanished, just cut me off completely. I spoke with my younger brother. He did the same thing, really open and up, we exchanged emails and phone calls. And then all of a sudden he just said, I think it's a scam. Don't ever call me again. And that was it.
Well, they must have suffered. Who knows what went on in that house?
Yeah.
Babies being thrown down the stairs and lots of alcohol. Sounds they had their own trauma and probably blocking out.
God.
Not to mention abandoning and possible murder.
Yeah. So, okay. So Jill, there's nothing you've never found.
No. So over the years, I've got to test a lot of women who thought they were Jill. Their stories seem to fit what we're looking for and everything. But unfortunately, DNA always ruled them out. But I just got a call from NECMEC the other day, and we're actually working on something that could lead us to a real Jill.
Is she deceased or?
No, she's alive.
She's alive.
Yeah.
What,
so I'll know soon.
Oh my God. You need to keep.
Yeah, please.
So on the other side of the coin.
Yeah, I want to know where's Paul?
The reason I started this whole journey wasn't to find me, it was to find Paul. And it took a long time, but we found him. Everyone said, don't waste your time. You're not going to find this guy, right? We found him through DNA. He actually matched up. His daughters actually submitted DNA on a site which matched up to Dave Fronczak, their biological son, as a brother. It's the craziest thing. So he was living in Michigan, about 4 hours from Chicago the whole time.
Was he stolen by the people who kept him, or it was a racket?
Okay. So this is where the story gets even more interesting. I'm really working on this. Okay. I believe the Chicago outfit was involved. Because the outfit, the mob.
Oh.
Yeah. So this lady that actually raised him actually worked for the Chicago outfit. And I don't believe she was the kidnapper because she didn't match the description of what my mom said and what another nurse in the room said. But we found someone else that also worked for the mob that we believe was the kidnapper. So I'm working with that right now. And then it gets even better. I just found out that I'm related to Lefty Rosenthal. You know who that is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is my cousin, right? So he started out in Chicago, then he went to Atlantic City, and then he went to Vegas and opened up all the casinos here. My dad was a cop. My biological dad was a cop in the 60s on the boardwalk. Their neighbor was Nicky Scarfo, who ran the Jersey mob.
And you're drawn to Vegas. The whole thing is just.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Our DNA is strange, right?
It really is. So those are all the things I'm working with right now. I'm trying to tie up all these loose ends.
So you may not know, but the woman who stole you, not her, but who was stolen for, she couldn't have children, or
I mean,
the one to help.
The one that raised Paul.
Paul. Sorry. They want that. Do you think it was like she just needed a baby?
Jack was nowhere near Chicago at any time. Yeah.
I was never there.
That's just so weird.
Yeah. No. So from what I've gathered so far through research is that she did this. She was given the baby because when the baby was kidnapped, they didn't expect all the heat that was on this case. I mean, this was one of the, next to the Lindbergh baby, it was the biggest kidnapping in our country. So I guess the people that originally were going to take Paul backed out, and they needed someone to raise the baby.
That's what I was wondering.
They raised him. Yeah. They could have done something else.
Why did they kidnap him to begin with? For like an infertile couple in the mob or something?
I would say money, probably money. That's the main motivator, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just, There must have been some sort of, were
higher
other
up.
babies kidnapped around the same time, or?
Not from hospitals.
I mean, we've had a couple of
Yeah.
adoptee, like, who had some kidnappings out of hospitals at birth. But nothing like this is. So how was Paul's upbringing? And did he did he have all the same feelings as other adoptees have, and feeling like he didn't fit in? And
So Paul had a hard life.
Mm.
I mean, he was raised by nefarious people. So he wasn't really into sharing his feelings and things.
Yeah.
At first, he wanted nothing to do with it at all. And I guess about the same time he found out that he was Paul, he found out he was diagnosed with cancer.
God, a lot on Paul. And did
Yeah.
your parents get to meet the parents who raised you, your adopted parents? Did they get to meet Paul again?
So once again, same time, this is when COVID first started happening. So he's diagnosed with cancer and he can't travel. But I was able to get them to talk on the phone. My mom actually got to talk with him a couple of times. And to me, I was with my daughter in Chicago when he called, and we were upstairs. We could hear the phone call. And my main mission was to try to find my mom and dad's real son and hopefully have them connect. And I was able to accomplish that. And when my mom was talking with him, I was beyond ecstatic. I mean, this was the reason I started everything, and it all came to fruition.
How'd your mom do with that?
She was pretty amazing. She talked to him, and she said he wasn't much of a conversationalist. She had to really just keep the conversation going. And she's like, what do you say to your son that you only saw for a couple of hours back in 1964? But she talked to him, and then she got to say goodbye to him before he passed away.
Oh, so he had advanced
died.
cancer.
Yeah, it happened really fast. He actually died a day before his birthday. He died on April 25th. His birthday was the 26th.
So
Paul.
he wasn't really open with you about.
He wouldn't even talk to me. But I sent him a book, my first book, and he read it, and he actually gave it to some of his friends. I did hear about that.
And did he have any kids or anything?
Yeah, he had a few daughters. That's how we found the DNA. His daughters went submitted DNA for the website.
And so now, do your parents have contact with their grandkids?
My mom did for a while, and they kind of pulled away. My father passed away in 2017, so we didn't get to experience any of that. Finding Paul and all that.
He never knew any of this.
No, unfortunately.
Well, when you got your DNA results back, how did they respond to that? Like in 2012?
Yeah. So my dad really swears at all, but he got on the phone. It was okay. Basically, what happened was I didn't want to call him. And so George and I had filmed this segment that was going to air in a few days. And George said, you better tell your parents before this airs, because I got a feeling it's going to go all over. And he was right. So I decided to send them an email, because I know that they're both kind of hard of hearing because they're older. Mm-hmm. If I would have called them on the phone, they would have only heard what they wanted to hear and not have a chance to process it. And I didn't think it would go well at all. So I sent this email, and so I figured they could process it. They could read it over a few times, really understand it before responding. Sent them the email. They read it. They called me. I answered the phone. My mom starts yelling at me. How dare you do this to us? We're not good enough for you. You don't love us as parents. I hear the phone shuffle around. My dad gets on, and he said, you're an asshole. Click. And that was it. And we didn't talk about a year.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Where was Dave in all this?
Dave, in the beginning, Dave was all for it, helping me, on this journey, finding the real Paul. And then he sided with my parents and said, no, I don't want nothing to do with this. Don't call me.
It's just so much trauma for everybody. I mean, what it opens up for them, they, inside probably suspect you're not their son somewhere along the way. They're loving you, raising you, and they still have to put this day that happened to them. And where is that little boy? And then Paul, I can understand Paul. I mean, I have no idea, but maybe he would pissed because you got his parents, right?
Well, I had guilt because I lived this guy's life. I had an amazing life. And I wasn't Paul. I was Jack, you know? So there's I felt really bad.
What was Paul's name that he was given to be raised with?
Kevin Beatty.
What was it?
Kevin Beatty.
Huh.
Yeah, in Michigan.
Wow. What a mind-blowing story this is.
Mind blowing for sure. So, and it's still going. I mean, you still have a lot of stuff going.
Can't wait to hear what you find out about Jill. I hope you find her. I saw just the thought of like them murdering a baby is just.
There's a thing that Alex and I did. So we found my grandma's house in Atlantic City, and we found the lot. The house is gone, but the lot is still there. So I hired this guy for a couple $100 to do a sonar radar sweep of the property for disturbances, because I thought if they just abandoned me, maybe something bad happened to Jill, because I heard stories about them throwing us downstairs, and one of the twins was kind of frail. So this guy does a radar sweep really quick, and he finds 3 possible grave sites on this property. So it was easy to do the radar sweep. We were in and out like a half an hour. But to start digging holes in this property, I knew it'd be a problem. So we had to find the guy who owned the property. We had to pay him like, I don't know, it's like $1,000 just to dig on the property. In Atlantic City, right? Everyone's looking for a buck.
Yeah.
No offense to Atlantic City, my hometown. So we
from one gambling city to another.
Right?
I know, right? Yeah. So when the guy did the radar sweep, we X'd out 3 areas that were could be possible grave areas. So we went back there and we had time to dig up 1 hole. And I remember digging it. And I'm pretty good shape, but when you're digging in the middle of summer in Atlantic City, it's pretty hard.
Yeah.
There were some guys digging a pool next door. And I walked over and said, "Hey, can you guys give me a hand?" The guy said, "Yeah, what's going on?" I said, "Help me dig a hole." He's like, "That's what I do." His name was Shane. He was the coolest guy ever. He came over, we started digging, and I got out of the hole. He got in, and he started, getting real deep. He's like, "By the way, what are we looking for?" And I said, "My sister." He said, "Holy shit." And he started digging faster and faster. He's like, "I have a daughter." Started digging, right? We got down to where the water from the ocean started coming up. And at that point, all of a sudden you heard tink, tink, tink. Little bones were falling in the shovel. He stopped. He looked up at me and he said, "I've been digging pools out here for years. Never found any bones." Holds the shovel up and there were little bones. You could have heard a pin drop on that empty lot. It was amazing. Unfortunately, we had the bones analyzed. They were animal bones.
I was going to say. Yeah.
But I'll never forget the feeling. Just, that could be my sister right there. It was the craziest feeling.
I'm just hoping you find her alive.
Me too.
That she was abandoned elsewhere and something.
Did you?
Well, I don't know if you guys believe in psychics.
Feeling like you had a twin? Some people.
So my whole life, I've always been searching for something. I've probably had over 100 jobs in my life. I've moved probably 50 times, different states, different areas. I'm always searching for something. And I believe it's because I had my twin taken away from me. And I was put in all these different situations, different 3 identities by the age of 5. So inadvertently, not knowing I had a twin, I was searching for something. So, yeah.
I'm hoping that she has the same feeling and you meet her. I'm just, I mean, you're really healthy for what you've been through, honestly, to think of that early trauma. I mean, you had a lot of trauma.
And do you have 1 child or how many children do you have?
I have 1 child and I spoiled her because I promised her when she was born that I would be the best dad ever, because I don't want anything bad to happen to my child. Yeah. Matter of fact, when she was born in St. Rose Hospital, we didn't leave the room. And before she came out, I said, "Well, you're not taking her out of this room. We're doing everything in this room."
That's how there. Sarah and I were too. We're like, nope.
Yeah. I will say one thing about the whole Fronczak kidnapping. A good thing that came out of it was Code Pink. Whenever there's a possible kidnapping in a hospital, they pass a Code Pink. Everything goes on lockdown. That's from the Fronczak kidnapping.
Yeah.
God, that's just incredible. And no one was ever held accountable for it, huh?
No,
Wow.
yet. Not yet.
Not yet. Not
How old
yet.
is your daughter now?
She just turned 14.
Aw. Good luck with those teen years.
I was about,
Well,
well,
I'm
you're
lucky,
embarking on.
I'm lucky. So I think she has a lot of my DNA. Well, of course she does. But like she's into music. She sings, dances, acts. She does everything. And she's getting all A's and B's in school. So that's fantastic.
Yay.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty proud dad.
That's great,
Well,
Jack.
thank you so much for coming today. This is just, I'm glad I didn't Google you ahead
Me
of time.
too. I was
Really, like,
tempted. I
oh, I
glanced
know, I
at what
was
you
too.
wrote us. I'm like, no, I want to hear this. This is,
I hope
Um,
I hope I didn't skip around too much because there's
No,
so
no,
much
no.
in the story.
There's so much, but I'm just, please let us know whatever you find out. Like, I mean, I know you'll have a long list of people to tell, but I hope we're on that list.
yeah, please tell us so we can
Oh,
talk about
absolutely.
it.
And just so you know, I've worked with like 3 different psychics now, and
Oh, yeah.
they had no idea who I am, but they all say the same thing, that Jill's still alive.
They
Oh,
all
good.
say it. Yeah,
Good.
So of course I believe in that.
Yeah.
of course.
Of course.
I do too. I have a good vibe about it. I don't, I'm just hoping this lead that you have, it's pretty soon you're going to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone would like to help, have any questions, any comments, you can go to fronczakfiles.com. You can check out my books, The Foundling and True Identity, and my film, The Lost Sons, is currently on Discovery Plus.
Great.
All
We
right.
will also put all this in
Mhm.
our show notes.
Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. I love your show. Don't ever stop what you're doing.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank
so
you,
great
Jack.
to meet you.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.